Hello and welcome to the Rock Your Voice podcast. Vocal coaching tips that will transform your voice, interviews that will inspire, industry guidance, and so much more. Without further ado, let's get on with the show. Today on the Rock Your Voice podcast, I'm talking with Shelby Rollins, who is a phenomenal voice coach based out of Nashville. We're talking all about voice health. And if you know me, you know I am absolutely obsessed with voice health. A healthy voice is the key to being a great singer. Life happens. We can be challenged by allergies. You can get sick with a cold. Perhaps you're stressed, run down. You're on the road and your body's just tired. In this episode, we're looking at the many ways that you can use natural supplements and products to really help boost immunity, keep your voice in the best shape possible if you are perhaps on the road or under stress or suffering from allergies. These products are just suggestions that can really help you get through that, and also can be part of a routine that you can use regularly to keep your voice in the best shape possible. I have to also mention that none of these products are endorsing us. These are just things that we genuinely love. Of course, I have to include the disclaimer: we are not medical doctors. This is not the be-all and end-all of your voice health. So if you are suffering from any issues with your voice, please do consult a professional. But these suggestions will really help you if you are in a pinch. Say you are on tour or you have a show or a gig coming up and you're like, I really don't know how to help my voice right away. These are suggestions that you can generally get over the counter from Amazon, what have you, and they might save you in a pinch and also can be used regularly as part of your voice care routine. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Shelby. Can you believe when I was last learning with you in Nashville, it was 2014?
Gosh.
I think it would have been.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's crazy how time has flown, and I miss it. I've got to come back soon. I really miss Nashville.
I know it is crazy because I think of we moved to Nashville in 2010.
Okay.
And I can't believe it's been almost 12 years since we lived here. And yeah, I feel like I've had a lot of old students kind of pop up lately that I taught like my first 2 or 3 years teaching with Brett. And I'm like, oh my gosh, which is crazy that I'm like, what is this? Why is everybody like coming out of the woodwork all of a sudden? But I love it.
Yeah. It was so fascinating because I literally just finished a session with one of my clients who was obviously like all the other musicians suddenly back on the road again and like hustle and like, and she was like, oh, my voice is, she had a cold, actually. It wasn't just fatigue. It was like, oh, I've caught a cold. Yeah. And so we were really digging into like all the ways and suggestions to try and just prevent any issues and keep her going and all of that stuff. And literally 5 minutes after that session, you were doing your live on all of these things. And I was like, this is just so valuable. So I was like, I have got to reach out to Shelby and get this recorded and get this as a podcast for people because this information is so fantastic. But let's first of all not take away that this in what we're about to talk about in great detail is available through Shelby's website and email. So if you head there, we'll put all the links in the notes and stuff. But don't just listen to this podcast. Go and check it all out on Shelby's website and all of her social and stuff because Shelby's amazing.
Thank you.
So let's start with a little bit of background about who you are and what you do. So yeah, tell us a bit about how you got to where you're at and what's going on.
Awesome. Well, I have been teaching voice for over 15 years. I started, and when I lived in New York City for about 5 years or so, I started doing it kind of as a side gig. I was, like a singer-songwriter, artist, hustling, had tons of part-time jobs. And finally, a friend of mine just approached me and was like, can you give me a voice lesson? And I thought to myself, why? And she just wanted help. And I was like, sure, come on over. And so I kind of taught her what I knew, which honestly wasn't a whole lot when it comes to efficient teaching strategy. But I taught her what I knew.
Yeah.
And then to my surprise, she handed me some money. And I was like, what? Why are you paying me for this? And I didn't want to take it. She made me. And I was like, okay. And then finally I was like, wait a minute. what if I did this on purpose? What if I actually tried to teach? And so I started to study what I knew at the time and the things that I had been taught, the pedagogies that I had been taught growing up and in my education, experience and up until that point, which was basically up through college, and started to advertise mostly just to friends like, hey, I'm and to start teaching voice lessons. And, I was not charging much because I obviously did not know what I was doing. And I was kind of practicing on people,
Right,
but
right.
I started doing it. Yeah. And I had good feedback and I actually really had fun. I was like, I kind of like doing this. And, as with anything, the more you do it, the more you learn about it and you start to kind of come up with better strategies and ideas. And so I started doing it more on purpose. And a friend of mine connected me to the guy I ultimately trained under, Brett Manning. And he was like, you need to teach what this guy teaches. And I was like,
Right.
yeah, sure, whatever. And then finally I was like, okay, I'll check it out. And it freaked me out. And I mean, blew my mind. I was like, I did not know this.
Right.
I have to know this now. And I studied under him and got certified as a coach and associate of his. And then I taught under his kind of banner at his studio for 8 or 9 years before I went off on my own, so that I could kind of just innovate and do some, new things and have some different types of opportunities. And I still teach that pedagogy because it's freaking amazing.
Right, right.
And I'm a huge advocate of it. And so I started studying, that methodology of the voice. It transformed my voice, first of all,
Right.
and really made me passionate about teaching. It was one of those things that I never knew I would even want to do until I kind of fell into it on accident.
Yeah.
And so I've been coaching for like 15 years and in different forms and fashions, but for the most part in one-on-one voice lessons.
Yeah.
I do group coaching and master classes and things like that as well. But in that same time frame, I have just become more passionate more and more every year, learning more and more every year about health and especially vocal health, upper respiratory health, and things like that. And obviously, in the climate that we're in right now, upper respiratory health is a big deal.
Yeah.
And I feel like not enough people are aware of preventative, prophylactic maintenance, especially for singers, but literally anybody, because all of this stuff applies to everybody. Ways to take care of yourself, to prevent sickness, to bolster your immune system. And I'm a huge advocate of that. Like, hey, instead of just treating yourself and waiting for somebody else to tell you what to do once you get sick, how about you protect yourself and not get sick in the first place? And so the more I dug deep into that and started taking better care of my body, ultimately, very holistically, like not just, taking a vitamin, but like my whole body, working out, exercise, changing the way I eat and all of that. I stopped getting sick. I used to get upper respiratory viruses all the time. I used to get some kind of sinus infection 2 to 3 times a year. Sometimes and honestly, a tipping point was when I started to get a like viral laryngitis on the heels of one of my kids bringing home something from daycare. And I was like, I can't do this anymore.
Right.
So I really started to be like, okay, something's got to change. And I started making big changes and I started to see success in that. And I quit getting sick. And that was several years ago that I really got real hardcore about it. And I don't know, 3+ years ago, probably.
Wow.
I mean, I hadn't really gotten sick until I got a cold like a month ago. And it was like the first time I'd gotten sick in 3 years.
Wow.
And I was like, wait a minute, this is crazy. I was actually grateful for the opportunity for my immune system to like go to work and kick its butt. And I got through it in about 3 days. But I was like, this is weird. Like, when you kind of get sick, you're like, wait a minute, I haven't been sick in a long time.
Totally.
But anyway,
That's
so I
great.
love to incorporate that in vocal coaching and teaching my students how to take care of their voices because that is a huge part of it,
It really is, and it gets neglected so frequently. It's all about the
Yeah.
results of the voice and the singing. It's not like,
Yeah.
are you taking care of your instrument? I always talk about like how guitarists will baby their guitars and have humidifiers and all the things, and then you're changing the strings and oiling up the fretboard and like and then like, let's do a shot of whiskey, get on stage and go.
Yeah, that is a great point. That is a great point. Some musicians are like hardcore taking care of their gear.
Yes.
And singers need to also.
Yeah, totally. So let's dig into your sort of format of your vocal health and wellness 101. Honestly, the timing was just so crazy when I looked at this and all of these things. I can't remember, was it you that also did a video when you first got your Navage thing?
Yes.
Because I I've also seen on YouTube, I've seen people, I'm terrified of trying it because I've
Oh,
seen people's videos.
well, I know they're kind of intimidating, and I was actually terrified of a neti pot before I ever used one. Have you ever
Right.
used a
I
neti pot before?
haven't even, like, do you not get like the burn, like when you dive in a swimming pool and you weren't prepared?
That can happen, but it shouldn't
Okay,
if you
okay.
use it the right way. So, okay, I was terrified of a neti pot too. I had a roommate when I lived in New York who religiously used her neti pot like every day. She was a
Okay.
singer, and she had the actual teapot where
Right.
she would dump table salt in it, pour New York City water into her neti pot, and like
Wow.
send that thing up, which I won't advocate for because like you're supposed to use distilled water. I mean, or just what really highly filtered water at
Yes,
least.
yes.
And they give you like saline packets that you theoretically should use. It's not necessarily table salt, but at any
Right.
rate, the point being, I was terrified by this until she and I both got the flu one year, and it was like the sickest I've ever been. It was like the
Oh,
one time. I mean, I can't remember another time I ever got the flu. Period. But I got the flu that year, and talk about quarantine. Like
right.
we were holed up in our apartment for like a week, 2 weeks, because we were just sick for that long. And I finally got so desperate that I was like, all right, show me how to do this thing. I can't
Yeah.
breathe. And so I went to a CVS down the street from my apartment and got uh, not a neti pot like the teapot, but I got a they call it, I think it's called a Sinocleanse, which is
Right.
like a squeeze bottle. It's just like a little plastic bottle with a pointed tip on the top, and you squeeze it, and the pressure sends it up through
Okay,
your nasal canal
okay.
side. Those are honestly more efficient, in my opinion, than the
Yeah, I
teapot.
was gonna say I
We've grown in our technology. So anyway, the that was super helpful, and I was real scared, but I was like, I can breathe for the first time in 10 days.
amazing.
So, okay, I'm
Yeah.
down. And that was the first time I used it, and I never turned back. Well, I used that thing for many years.
Mm.
I get a new one every once in a while, but
Yeah.
I found the Navage
Yes.
sometime, I don't know, last year. My sister-in-law had one, told me about it. And I was like, what? What is this thing? What's different about the Navage is that it's battery powered, and you put the saline water solution in the top. There's these little nose plug things that go into your nose, and then you push a button, and it literally it powers the water up through one side, but it also sucks the water out the other side.
Right,
And
right,
so as a result of that trigger, it gets all of it out, because sometimes you
right.
do a neti pot and then your nose like dribbling water for
Okay.
30 minutes afterwards. It's just super annoying. So it gets everything out. I actually used mine this morning, but
Okay.
they're incredible. You can, if you don't really know how to do it, you got to make sure you're breathing through your mouth nonstop the whole time.
Okay.
Don't hold your breath or anything like that. Then it'll work fine, but it is possible to do it wrong and kind of make it burn a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
But I put all sorts of things in my Navage, talking about like health and stuff.
Okay.
I put colloidal silver in mine. I put tea tree oil in it sometimes, just a
Right.
tiny bit. You don't need about like a drop.
Right.
But yeah, you can put all that kind of stuff in there because, well, and colloidal silver is on my vocal health wellness list of things to take for maintenance, but treatment as well for upper respiratory viruses.
Right.
All the things on there are 100% naturally derived. None of it is
Yes.
synthetic or prescriptive or over the counter drug kind of stuff. And again, I'm not against like modern medicine, but
Mhm.
I think it's important to treat things naturally first as much as possible. So the colloidal silver is like a very potent antibacterial, antiviral. Most people are like, silver, what? And you just have
It's
to,
really interesting. I remember researching that quite a few years back. I have never
yeah,
used it, but I remember the same thing. I was like, what is this? It's really fascinating. It's used for a lot of stuff. It's
a lot of stuff.
yeah.
Yep. Even like my pediatrician, for not mine, my kid's pediatrician has used it in treating a skin. My son had some kind of like skin tag thing he had to have removed on his collarbone,
Right.
on his skin, and that was part of the healing materials or whatever that were
Right, right.
used to sort of laser it off and clean it up. There's silver in there.
Wow.
It's amazing for skin lacerations.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, the neti pot, the reason why it's so good for singers, it's one of my first things I always tell people to take or to start using and implementing is, say you have, I mean, how many singers do you know who have allergy issues?
Right. Right.
everybody. And Nashville is a hotbed for allergies. Like we do have the
Yes.
four seasons very obviously here. And so anytime the weather changes or trees pollinate, so many like flowering trees here, people just get, the symptoms of a cold. And then it sticks with them forever for, and then it really affects their voice in all sorts of ways. Well, it's a trickle down effect. It's not like one symptom, it's one thing that leads to another. So a neti pot, by flushing out either excess mucus or honestly like viral particles that you've inhaled up into your nasal cavity, that's where the viral load sort of starts and increases. So by
Right.
flushing it out, you're instantly decreasing your viral load, or the pollinating substances that are up in your sinuses that give you headaches, watery eyes, scratchy throat, all that kind of stuff. And it creates, obviously, the mucus is your body's response to some sort of allergen or viral particle coming in, and it creates excess mucus. It's actually a healing mechanism, but that's just what happens. But you got to flush that stuff out, or else it can kind of just sit there and then start to drain down your throat. This is the main thing that leads to a chest mucus cough,
Right.
is drainage in the sinuses. So if you can flush it all out, I mean, it's gross sometimes seeing what comes out, but it's also kind of cool because you're like, look at all that stuff that's now not in my body anymore. Great.
Yes.
And but that's decreasing all of the stuff that's going to ultimately come back up, right? So if you're going to start coughing, it's the coughing over and over again that berates on your vocal cords and makes
Yes.
inflammation and makes them scratchy and hoarse and all of that kind of stuff that really stinks. And so flushing it all out is a huge, it's not a silver bullet, but it is a huge part of reducing any of that from happening.
Right.
And again, you're flushing out your viral load, so you can kind of chop sickness at its knees
Love
by
it.
doing something like that.
Love it.
It's
And
huge.
And again, not against like modern medicine and all of the things that you can take, but these suggestions are so not so much better, but if you are taking, say, allergy medication or cold medication, that can just dry you out, right?
Right.
And as a singer, that's just deadly, right? You don't want to be having that chemical physical reaction of just suddenly everything is dry.
Right, absolutely. And to become super dependent on those things suppresses your immune
Yes.
system. It can, just really jack things up in there.
Right.
So I've taken plenty of, modern medicines in my life, but I don't ever want to be, as much as I am able to control this, I will, preface that. I don't ever want to be dependent or chronically attached to synthetic drugs.
Right, right.
I mean, I am not every person. I can't speak for people who have significant challenges and things like that. But I just do believe that when you can fix a root cause in your body naturally, you're way better off long term.
Totally.
anyway.
Totally. So, turmeric. Tell me about that one. How do you use that for your voice?
I've got some right over there, but I usually take turmeric in liquid form. You can take capsules of it. I mean, you can get turmeric in a lot of forms now. It's kind of become a popular supplement in the last 10 years. I've been using it for about that long, but I love turmeric. And Brett Manning actually introduced it to me as a singer's type supplement. It is a potent anti-inflammatory.
Okay.
The liquid form, you can get it in like dropper bottles. Stores like Whole Foods or real natural type places carry it. And the main thing I used to do is I would add it to just 2 ounces or so of water and just squirt, half dropper full into it and drink it. I always tell my students it tastes like a dirty meadow, but
That
all right.
almost
It's not
sounds
that bad.
pleasant. A dirty, like natural.
I know, right? Because it's of the earth.
Yeah.
And some of my students think it's the nastiest thing they've ever had. I'm like, well, then you haven't had many supplements yet, because
Yeah.
in the direction of things that are way more gross than turmeric.
Right.
But anyway, potent anti-inflammatory. When you pair it with black pepper, it increases your absorption. It gives antioxidant support. But yes, it can reduce inflammation of the vocal cords and really help with the connection, the vocal cord connection.
Okay.
Obviously, singers deal with vocal breaks a lot, the voice cracking and things like
Right.
that. I find it to be very helpful for that. I like the liquid form because I feel like the absorption's super fast. Obviously, it's going down your food pipe, not your windpipe.
Yeah.
As my son calls it, the food hole, not the air hole. However, I find that it's just faster acting,
Right.
vocally, and I've turned on so many friends and singers and students to turmeric, and they just carry it with them, and they'll like have some in their water bottles that they keep on
Right.
stage while they're performing, and people are like,
Awesome.
"What was in your water bottle?" Because it's very, very yellow.
Okay, okay. I'm gonna have to try that. And
It's great.
the Cali tea, is that the stuff that you guys used to sell at Brett's
Yes.
studio? Yeah, yeah. That is
Yes.
delicious. I
It's
haven't
the
been
best
able to
tea
find
ever.
it.
It is
probably
hard to
online.
find. I think it's an MLM, so you have to
Okay.
find a distributor, but you can go to their website. But you can also you can get it on Amazon
Okay.
sometimes. Sometimes it's available, sometimes it's not. There's people have sticker shock on it because it's
Yeah.
expensive. It is
Yeah.
not the cheapest tea you can find, but
Right.
it's really worth it. I mean, powerful punch of antioxidants, anti-inflammatories. It is non-drying. It is very
Right.
hydrating. It's very delicious to your point. It doesn't have that weird aftertaste that tea has. It's non-caffeinated. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
so good. I feel like some teas really do kind of dry you out, and it is.
Totally.
I will choose it 100 times out of 100 over throat coat. I know people
Okay.
really like throat coat. I do not. I do not like
Okay.
throat coat. I
Okay.
find it very bizarre tasting, and it
It
makes me feel
is.
weird.
It is bizarre tasting. No, I remember I came home with boxes of that stuff when I
Oh,
came
it's so
back
good.
from Nashville. It is, yeah, Cali tea, delicious. I highly recommend it. So, um,
Yeah.
and then, so yeah, Entertainer's Secret. This is really interesting. A lot of these things I have not tried, so I was really, really fascinated. So thank you so much, Shelby, for sharing all of this because it's stuff that I
Yeah.
haven't turned to yet. So, yeah, Entertainer's Secret. Tell me about that one.
It's a throat spray. So
Mm-hmm.
these exist. This is just the one that I love to take. It
Okay.
was developed in part by an ENT who I have seen this ENT myself. He's a crazy guy. He's really interesting. And he's kind of like one part natural, one part more traditional. So he's kind of got a traditional, a conventional side, and then the functional
Right.
methodology side of his practice. But
Awesome.
the main ingredient is aloe, which is an anti-inflammatory. I was using it just yesterday because I was doing a warm up with my live group, and I was in the middle of something. You know, when you're doing stuff live, you're like, oh look, that didn't
Yeah. Yeah.
happen the way I thought it was going to on my voice. And so I was using this spray. I was having like I could feel some phlegm, but a dry tickle, you know, and
Yeah.
it was super helpful in that moment of being able to get through the exercise,
sure.
because I was like, it wasn't a straining or difficult one. It was one that's normally really easy, but it's super helpful for reducing inflammation, helping connectivity as well,
Fantastic.
hydrating, all of that, moisturizing, whatever, you know, like aloe.
Yeah, yeah, that's fantastic. And then probiotics, obviously keeping all of that in line just changes everything for your body.
Everything.
But yeah, how is this? How does that affect your voice? How do the probiotics help
So
you?
this is, you know, there's like direct things. So some of the things we were talking about already are more direct effects on the voice. Then there's some things that are indirect, but still just as important and
Right.
effective. Because this is where it kind of comes to the whole body. And like I was saying before, I've become such a proponent of like whole body health, because if the health and capacity of your voice is hamstrung by your bodily health. Like you will, if you are healthy in your body, your voice can
Yes.
be healthy. And if your body is not healthy, your voice will not reach its full potential. And that's just science.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, so gut health is the foundation of like overall health.
Totally.
And most viruses, most sicknesses start in your gut. And so a lot of people have autoimmune issues, and that honestly has a huge dynamic with the gut health and healing your gut. People have probably heard of leaky gut syndrome or whatever, and that's a major player in autoimmune issues. People who have huge gluten intolerances usually have a leaky gut, and healing that can heal other. I'm not saying it's going to completely rectify your autoimmune issue, but it'll heal the gut. Healing your gut, helps to bring better immune support to your overall body. So
Right.
probiotics are putting the healthy bacteria into your gut so that healthy bacteria fights. It acts like a natural antibiotic,
Yeah.
right? So if you have good bacteria, then you're fighting the bad bacteria that comes in and makes you sick, essentially.
Right.
It's year round. It's maintenance. I mean, I take a probiotic
Yeah.
every single day.
Yeah, yeah. And as a voice coach, it's quite interesting. People will come for a singing lesson, and when you start doing that deeper dive into your students or your clients' overall health, there's things that you can hear as a voice coach and be like, okay, and then it leads to questions like, do you have this issue or that issue? And as a when you're coming into singing for the first time or something, and to be thinking of those things like how on earth, why is my voice coach asking me about these things? It's like, but it does affect your voice. It's so important to sort of disclose these things with your voice coach, because if you do have them, it can definitely affect your instrument, because your entire body is your instrument. So
absolutely,
with things going on, like it sort of seems like obvious things like, oh, TMJ, or if you have sinus issues or all those things. But then when you get to the full instrument, it's really important to be aware of, hang on, what's holding me back? And then I guess on a more sort of superficial level, you know, those stress and sleep and rest and all of those things. Just
absolutely.
Yeah.
We brush that kind of stuff off, especially rest, like you're talking about stress, and that all those lack of like good sleep and stress and anxiety and worry and fear are huge immunosuppressors, and we brush it off like, but I'm busy, I'm hustling, I'm like, you know, doing my work, and we feel so much of a sense, like a personal sense of accomplishment and pride, because we're doing a lot of stuff. Not paying any attention to the deterioration of our health. And honestly, it's stuff that people don't tend to care about till they get older. Like I'm 38 and I care about that stuff more than I did when I was in my 20s. And you know, my general view on health was like, so that I looked good and, you know, could function fine and whatever, you know, but it wasn't about taking care of myself so that I could efficiently do the work that I need to do, so that I could be there for my kids and have energy for my children and chase them around because they're wild and have a lot of energy. You know, I would take care of, I want to be around to see them have kids. And that was just not my mindset when I was younger, because that's just some changes as you get older and you get better perspective. But people don't care enough about things like stress and rest and overall health. And you just exactly like your point is, it's your whole body. It is not just this thing isolated right here. People come in and they want a one trick pony. They want a silver bullet, like fix this thing. And I'm like, okay, but you got to be willing for me to talk about a lot of stuff, not just the one thing, because I know more and I know what's going to, you know, really be the domino that tips the whole line for you to have breakthrough.
Yeah, it's so important. So yeah, be open to it if your voice coach asks you totally random questions that you're like, hang on, how does my my gut health affect the fact that I can't hit these notes very efficiently? So I don't want to ruin everything that you have on this amazing list of things. I want people to go over and go get this list from you directly, Shelby. But let me see. Are there any specific ones you want to dig into? Because you've got lists of all the different sort of sickness strategies and recovery, essential oils, really just an incredible list of things that you can do to help yourself if you do get sick or if you want to be more preventative. So what are sort of the top ones that you'd love to touch on?
Sure. Yes, I will. There are a few more that I would totally say. And this is not an exhaustive list either, but a great start for people who need some help and direction. So one of them would be Propolis. So Propolis, I didn't know about it until the last few months myself, and now it's become my favorite thing. It's made from bees. They use it to create a layer of protection on the inside of a beehive, and it kind of keeps it from, you know, getting somehow compromised by bacteria and breaking down and things like that. So as we know, things like Manuka honey has not just any honey that you can get at the store, but like raw, unfiltered Manuka honey that has crazy helpful antiviral properties. And this is not like some weird hocus pocus natural stuff. Like this is, you can find this in all sorts of even more synthetically based products. Like there's honey as an ingredient in it, and it's super good for you. And it's helpful for, you know, allergy sufferers, but it's Propolis that is found in these types of things is helpful for sore throats, antimicrobial, anti-inflammatory, antifungal, antiviral, antibacterial. It helps, and this is the big thing that helped for me. So I have 3 kids. My second and third pregnancies, I had a wild case of pregnancy rhinitis, which
Okay.
is like the inflammation of the sinuses, and you basically sound stuffy and you have a hard
Oh,
time breathing through your nose just forever.
wow.
With
Wow.
my second child, it's just a common hormonally
Right.
responsive thing to pregnancy. And with my second child, after he was born, it was just gone. As soon as
Amazing.
he came out of me, it went away.
Wow.
With my third, it did not go away, and it just
Okay.
stayed forever. And I think, my body knew I'm done having children, so I'm just going to give you this gift of a pregnancy symptom you don't want until Jesus returns. And so I was just so frustrated because, especially as a vocal coach, I didn't have access to my pharyngeal resonator, my nasal cavity, nearly
Yes.
the level that I should. And as a result, the compensation, the overcompensation of my compression and my core muscles, I was squeezing and holding on too much. It was just frustrating. I mean, I
Hmm.
could still do what I needed to do, but it was not something where I was like, yeah, I really want to sing.
Yeah.
And so I had seen an ENT, and he prescribed a spray, like a nasal spray that is helpful for inflammation. It wasn't like a Afrin. It was different than that in its chemical makeup, I guess,
Hmm.
not like a steroid. But it didn't really help. I tried it, and I just was so frustrated. I just stopped using it. And finally, I found Propolis from a naturopath type store out in California that I followed on Instagram, and they started talking about it and how it was so helpful for sinus issues. I was like, "Give me some! I want to try that." And
Yeah.
so I started incorporating it into my daily supplement routine, and it was amazing the difference that I
Really.
felt. All of a sudden, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I don't sound like I have a cold all the time."
So
And I
good.
had easier connection, access into my pharyngeal, like I hadn't had in honestly like almost 3 years. Because my kid
Wow.
is 2 now, and it just recently shifted, and it started early in pregnancy that this
Wow.
happened. So I mean, it was like a long journey. And I was like, this is amazing. So anybody who's like me, who's suffered from pregnancy rhinitis, but you don't have to be a female who's had a child to be this way, but anybody who's just constantly feel like they have congestion, sinus pressure, sinus inflammation, I think that it's incredibly helpful. Side benefits is it's supposed to be really good for the skin and
Okay.
fertility.
Ah,
So
well, there you
bonus.
go. Bees
Yeah,
are amazing.
they are.
It's just
And
incredible.
I've had to learn to appreciate them because I was like terrified of them as a child because I got stung by like a swarm of
Oh
wasps when I was
no.
little. And I like hated them for all of time until I know, oh, okay, I
Yes.
guess they really do contribute to society. So,
Yeah, my sister, I think I still have it downstairs from when she visited last. Like this, she was literally just chomping on teaspoons of just pollen. Like you
oh
can
my
buy
gosh,
jars
yeah,
of the pollen. She'd be like, "Yeah, every morning have a teaspoon of bee pollen." I'm like, "Wow."
yeah. I learned once I lived here about having or local honey is super helpful because
Yes.
it's not a fast acting thing. It's a long journey. It's a long game that you're playing when you start regularly consuming local honey because it takes 1 to 2 years potentially for you to start to create an immunity, a environmental immunity essentially to the problem of pollen that your
Right.
body's kind of like, ooh, what is this? And so a lot of times people move to Nashville and instantly start struggling with allergies. But then if you take local honey pretty consistently, um,
Hmm.
you can actually build up a tolerance to
Wow.
it so it doesn't affect you and your allergies nearly as much. So
That's
it's
awesome.
amazing.
That's
It's a
awesome.
great idea.
And it's not disgusting either. It doesn't taste like
It's
filthy
not.
dirty
I know. That's one of
meadows.
the tastiest of all these things. This is true. I've kind of like poo-pooed some of these things for a long time because I was like, it's so gross. And then I'm like, oh, it's so good for you though. So I'm willing to do it, but some of them are not that bad at all.
Yeah.
But another one that I was going to say that's super helpful, and I mentioned this in the Navage, is tea tree oil or
Hmm.
Melaleuca oil. So tea tree oil is a great immune support for upper respiratory ailments. But here's the thing that I started doing with it recently that I used to not know about. You can diffuse oil. Obviously, people do that most of the time, but you can gargle tea tree
Mm.
oil. So you can just add a few drops to warm salted water
Hmm.
and gargle it. So it has crazy antibacterial properties and it helps to cleanse the tonsils and
Right.
clear out the infectious particles living in the back of your throat. super helpful to singers that are fighting sickness or have a cough. Um, it's amazing. It feels kind of like, what wizardry did I just do? Because I did it recently when I had that cold that I was mentioning
Yeah.
before, and I had just like not a sore throat, but kind of like that scratchy, irritated, made me kind of cough, but not because I had mucus type of
Just
thing. And and sometimes that stuff just makes you feel run down. Well, I knew that there was stuff in the back, right? Your tonsils
right.
just, God bless your tonsils, but they just hold on to
Yes.
viral particles like nobody's business. Again, where viral load increases, similar to your sinuses. So gargling, the tea tree oil gargle, is clearing out all of that stuff, and I
Amazing.
felt instantly better. It was
Wow.
it was weird. I had a low expectation, and it really blew my mind. I
Yeah.
also will do it on a Q-tip,
Yeah.
and I put some oil on a Q-tip and swab my nostrils. You can swab it with
Right.
colloidal silver as well, and you're kind of cleaning stuff out.
Yeah, that's
There,
amazing. Do you find with
antiviral, antibacterial.
tea tree oil that it dries a lot though, or like would you recommend, like, if you have singing coming up, maybe not do the tea tree right ahead of that, or is it okay?
Well, that's a good question. I would imagine everybody's tolerance to it is different.
Yeah.
And oils are so potent that
Yes.
a little bit goes a long way.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You really don't need as much as you think that you do.
Right.
So I would say, it's like a drop of tea tree oil when you gargle, or a tiny little, get your Q-tip wet with saline solution, warm water, and then dip just the top of those essential oil bottles. So it's not even a full drop on
Right.
your tip if you're going to do that. It's probably a trial by error thing. I
Yeah.
have not personally experienced being dried out by tea tree oil, but I can totally
Good.
see that people
Yeah.
could be, because like some people use tea tree oil, and I've done this before, on like a zit
Yeah.
on your face,
Yeah. Yeah.
and because it can dry it out and kill all the
Totally.
grossness that's up in there, because zits are basically little cesspools of bacteria. And so anyway, that can do that, so I can see why that
Right.
could happen. But
Okay.
that has not been my personal experience vocally, but
Okay.
I
Good.
mean,
Good. Good.
it could totally be the case.
Awesome.
One of the other things I think is helpful is using a handheld steamer. I bought one a couple years ago. It's called My Pure Mist, and it's just handheld. Mine's cordless. You can get it corded if you want, and it's just this little thing you hold, and it covers your face like a nebulizer type of face covering, and it's just steamed, distilled water that comes
Perfect.
out of it, and it's crazy good for hydration of
Yeah.
your vocal. It's great for
Totally.
inflammation.
Because that, obviously, you mentioned earlier, when you're swallowing, obviously your air hole, it goes down your food
Yeah.
hole.
Yes.
So the
Yes.
steam is so great because it immediately can go to the right places. So
Absolutely.
immediate
Yeah.
hydration and relief there. So yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I love the steamers. Um,
Mm.
fantastic. So where can people get access to this full list with all of this incredible information, Shelby?
So if you go to my website, mastervocal.com, there's a pop-up, window if you sign up to join the mailing list, which, listen, I'm terrible at sending emails, so I'm not gonna.
You know what?
And,
No, it's perfect. I
um,
signed up. You send the perfect amount of things are coming. It's not like, ah, Shelby, leave me alone. it's perfect.
I'm like, if I had more time, I probably would harass people more with more things like this, because I just want to help. I just want to help people, but
Yes, yes.
anyway, if you sign up, it's a double opt-in, so check your spam if you get are you sure you want to subscribe to this email list? And then you have to say yes, and then it sends it to you in a PDF, and it's just a long list. Like we said, we only covered maybe half or less of the things that are on there. Lots of other supplements and things like that for either treating, preventing, recovering from any kind of upper respiratory sickness. But yes, in fact, some of the last few things that we were talking about are more in the treatment and recovery side of
Yeah,
things. But
yeah.
all of the stuff that's preventative, I use, and the way I design the list is for it to build on top of itself. So the first section is maintenance year round, no matter what. And the second section being more immune support. And it basically says all of the first things plus now these. And then you keep going down, and it's the sickness strategies and the recovery for, when your voice gets hoarse and things like that. And it's all of the things above plus now these. So it builds on top of itself. And I tell you, I had not a single thing on this list is something I've never used or don't currently use. I have
Right.
every single one of these things at home right now. I did almost every one of these things this morning, all these supplements that I take every
Nice.
single day. I joke with my husband. He was I was starting to pull out all of our, our probiotics, my zinc, my vitamin C, and all of that. And I take high quality stuff. You can't buy the cheap stuff.
Yes.
It's no good. It's a waste of your money. But anyway, I was pulling all of it out. I was like, come here, old man, come take your pills. Because it's so funny. Like, you're pulling out all these, none of it is synthetic drugs. When I was a little child, I remember I was probably like 6, my grandmother was taking all of her, synthetic drugs. And I was like, Nana, do you take all those things to stay alive? Like, yes, I do. And I feel like that now, but except none of it is synthetic. It is all natural vitamins and things like that. So I do take it to stay alive.
You and your
But it's
husband
not in the
rattling.
traditional way. Yeah, I mean, America is you're in Canada, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Now, I can't speak to Canadians, but Americans, we are, God bless, we're some of the most over-medicated, unhealthy people
Yep.
in the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
There is just such a money machine in
Yeah.
the big pharma world,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I don't apologize for feeling that way, but
No.
it was reality.
Yeah.
And I mean, some people in our generation don't even realize in the United States that there was a time when you didn't see commercials for pharmaceutical drugs on TV.
Right.
And yet other countries it's illegal to do
Yes.
that. But in
Yes.
America it is so normal now to see it. And I remember when I first started seeing drugs advertised on TV, I was like, this is a weird commercial.
Uh-huh.
This is very strange because
Yeah.
they list all of the side effects, that
Yes.
go along with it. And it's kind of funny because it's weird,
Yeah.
but a lot of people don't even know that there was a time where we didn't do that here, but
Yeah.
we do, and we're more sick than ever. And I deeply, deeply believe in dealing with the root cause. And I'm not saying, again, I'm not against synthetic drugs. I believe that they're a gift. Modern medicine is a gift, and it has saved many lives, but dependency on them can really kill people.
Yeah.
And I want to treat things at their root cause to prevent any need for those things as much as humanly possible.
Right.
I'm
Totally.
thankful for them when you need them, but I don't want to depend on that stuff.
Yeah.
So
And that band-aid approach of like, okay, well, this is curing the symptom, but what is actually the cause? Like,
Right.
how can we help the cause as opposed to just patching over the symptoms?
And this is not incongruent, it is congruent with my philosophy and my approach of vocal coaching. Like, so many vocal pedagogies out there are band-aid approaches,
Yep. Yep.
just put it in your head voice or sing it from your diaphragm and then you'll be fine. Or I've had a student tell me that she had somebody tell her once that she couldn't hit notes because of her menstrual cycle, and I was like, I'm sorry, what? What?
Wow.
Like, okay, well, maybe. And I'm like in my mind going, okay, well, there's hormonal shifts in your cycle, and that can lead to inflammation that perhaps can affect your voice, but that's a real big stretch for me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, let's deal with your vocal cords. Let's talk about the muscle control. Let's deal with the thing that's actually phonating.
Yeah.
That is the root cause. That is
Yeah.
not the Band-Aid approach. And so I deeply believe in that strategy of teaching people. So I feel like health is the same thing.
Yeah.
Deal with the root causes and see how much better your body functions as a result.
Right, right. That's crazy. I've heard that menstrual cycle thing too. I've heard
You
that.
have?
I have.
Oh my gosh.
It was coming from a
That was the
coach
first
in
time
Nashville,
she said that.
actually. So I wonder if she went to the same person before you.
I don't know. But that's scary that more than one person thinks that.
I
I mean, I could be proven wrong. I'm welcome to be proven wrong, but I was like, I'm not so sure about that.
I mean, I can understand how, like, again, it comes, like, big picture, maybe, like you say, inflammation, stress, hormonal shift, all of that stuff, but it ain't gonna knock 3 notes out of your range. Like,
I know,
what?
right? Or just randomly make you pitchy.
Yeah.
Because I think that even though those things can have a bearing on your voice, good coordination can pretty much almost always trump your bad circumstances.
Yes.
So whatever and that I tell people all the time, like, if you're sick, come in anyway, at least once for a sick lesson.
Right.
I mean, if you're real sick, please, keep that at home, or we'll Zoom instead. But I think it's helpful for people to have a sick lesson to learn how to coordinate in spite of real life problems like that.
Yes.
And good coordination can really cover a multitude of vocal sins.
Totally. Yeah, this is exactly where I was with my client that I mentioned, because again, like, don't bring your sickness in my house. I'm more than happy on Zoom, but to have that experience where she's like, "Okay, I have a show this weekend. How do I manage my voice in this situation?" So
because you have to find a way to win.
Have that safe way of dealing with your voice when it's not at its optimal performance level. So that's really that's really validating to hear that you also encourage that. And also sometimes, like, just managing your voice when you can't access that full pharyngeal, and how to be really careful to get there without just reefing on your chords.
For sure.
Really cool. Really cool. Oh, Shelby, it's been so good to catch up with you. I have such good memories of you. I think you were like, "Okay, you're gonna sing this badass Jessie J song" when I first met you, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this chick is crazy." But you pushed me out of my comfort zone. I had an awful lot of fun. I had a really great time, and one day hope to do it again. So
awesome.
Thank you again so much for taking the time to talk with me, and thank you for creating this document, because I think it's going to be so useful for so many singers. So
I really hope so. I mean, man, I want people to be healthy, you know? I just have found so much freedom in my own body from so much of this stuff, and just learning. You don't have to be a doctor or a scientist to learn how to take good care of your body.
Yes.
And it is for everyone. It doesn't have to be this hidden treasure. And I feel like it is so often these days. And so I'm like, look, you can be healthy too. It's okay, you know, and you can be educated. And I want people to be educated.
I love it. Remind us again, Shelby, what website, social media, how can people find and follow you?
Yes, my website is mastervocal.com, and my Instagram, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram. Technically, I'm on Twitter. I've never tweeted, but that's fine. Facebook, just look up Master Vocal. And then on Instagram, my handle is at Shelby Rollins, MV, standing for Master Vocal.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you again so much. It's been really great to catch up and learn more about all of these amazing things, and hopefully be in touch with you very soon.
Yes, thank you
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Please feel free to like, share, subscribe, and if you feel inclined to leave a review, I truly appreciate it. You can check out all things voice at rockitvocalstudios.com. That's ROCKIT vocalstudios.com, and follow me on social too at Rocket Vocal Studios. Thanks again for listening, and I'll be back with lots more for you very soon.